What is up, everybody? This is Recap Rewind. I'm J-Lag.
And I'm NB, and today, we had to call up the daddy himself and a good friend of the podcast, Mr. Mark Consuelos, to chat about this week's episode of Riverdale titled Chapter 88, Citizen Lodge.
The episode delves deep into the past of Hiram Lodge, and we finally get to understand all the reasons why he is the way he is. As always, to our continuing listeners and our brand new ones, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.
Okay, without further ado, let's get into the podcast, Mark. Welcome back to Recap Rewind. Thank you so much for joining us. How have you been?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I love you guys. You guys are hilarious. From the beginning, since I've been on the show, my favorite tune-in, my favorite podcast to figure out what's going on. Hot takes, your funny takes. So, it's on.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
So let's get right into it. Right off the top, what a great episode this was. We absolutely loved it. The whole fandom loved it. From The Godfather to A Bronx Tale and probably some Goodfellas, it was full of gangster movie references. Something that draws me to these films is the idea of this anti-hero that does a lot of bad things, but ultimately it's for the family. When did you find out that we would be getting this origin story for Hiram? And was there anything specifically you wanted to include in his backstory?
All those references, A Bronx Tale for sure is such a tie-in to this episode. I think the last time we spoke, I don't remember where that was, but I kind of intimated that this was coming. I knew this was coming back. I knew this was coming back then.
Wow.
We were talking about it, and I didn't intimate. I kind of said, well, there might be. We'd love to, get a look at what's happening with a deeper look at why he does what he does. So I was talking to Roberto about this episode back then.
Wow.
Yeah, what I love about Hiram is that, and then from the beginning and talking to you guys, you're like, why does he act that way? I go, he loves his family. Yeah. He wants to protect his family. And he does it. He obviously has, a really bad way of showing it most of the time. But I think he was chasing this thing, that he could never make right. And I think this episode lets you into exactly, what drove him to the sociopathic tendencies that he has, is because he has this guilt of what he did. And how he left the relationship with his father that he'll never be able to fix, no matter
what he does.
No matter what he does, and I've heard of people, in my life that have had this, they get an argument with a parent and the parent goes off to work and they, unfortunately they pass away and they never get a chance to
resolve it,
make it right. And I go, wow, when we start talking about that with Roberto, I'm like, when I read the script, I'm like, this is great. This is so, so great for, and I know in the fandom, like Hiram is like, he's such a pain in the ass.
Hiram, a pain in the ass?
Why do you have to deal with this guy? And I know that, totally know that. And, in talks with Roberto, I would say, he'd say, we're doing this. I'm like, whatever you need me to do. And I'm here to serve the show, the story, the dynamic between the characters. And if people don't like you, it's not really, I mean, I don't take it personally. I'm there to, that's my role in the show. And it's been it's been so fun to do that. But I'm glad, that being said, I'm glad that we have a chance to look at maybe just a little bit of a why, just what's driving this person. And
totally.
You mention of the anti-hero, and we love those characters. We forgive those characters, and unrightly so and unjustly so. But all those gangster shows, you're kind of rooting for these anti-heroes because they do, at the end of the day, they have some redeeming qualities that they really have just kind of warped out into into the wrong area.
For sure. And we were talking about it on our podcast yesterday, that in The Bronx Tale, at least, the mob guy gives him some great advice. Even though he's doing all these shady things, he's giving the kid really sound advice on real life. So it's this really weird, double-edged sword. You can't hate him. You love to hate him. Yeah. It's Hiram Lodge. So I want to get into the performance because it was really powerful. And you took these characters to like a level that we've never seen before on Riverdale. And then you also play 3 characters in one episode. So you play present day Hiram, you play Javier, and then you play like a young gangster Hiram. Did you have to do anything specific to get into each character before a scene?
Yeah, the father character Javier, to me, it reminded me, and let's not gloss over the fact that I got to work with my son on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
of course.
The meta of it all
Totally.
was just too. We can talk for hours about like that experience of just having having had him on set and just watching him do what he was doing. But my father, who is very close to my kids, they call him No. He's Mexican, but my mom's Italian. So it's not abuelo, it's No, right? Like the Italian. And growing up, this guy was the scariest dude I ever met in my life. I mean, my mustache, just like that, just like that mustache. He was a scary, scary dude. And it maybe just because he had that look on his face. But now, and I mean, not violent, just kind of had like an energy about him, right? Very serious dude. And now, I see him kind of like doddering around with my kids, and he's the sweetest, most gentle guy.
Yeah.
I would look at my son. I'm like, you see that guy right there? I'm like, yeah, it's No. He's the best. He's awesome. He's so sweet and chill. I go, that guy was scary.
Yeah.
I really played my dad.
Yeah.
My dad, not so much the scary version, but kind of like the grandfather version of my dad, who loves his family, who has this magical curiosity, and maybe sometimes not so practical. Like he moved his family to Riverdale, right? Search this fool's gold, for the lack of a better word, right?
Totally.
His dream, and and this honor and this integrity, and just this good guy, and this really humble guy. So that was that guy. And that to me, I didn't talk to Roberto about it, but I'm like, it was on the page. I go, I know who I'm playing. And the best character study that we ever have as actors are our parents. Study them. That's why we catch ourselves doing stuff like our parents all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Studied them, for better or for worse, for 18 years for the most part, sometimes till we leave. So it was just easy to move and to do that. So that was easy. The coming up gangster Hiram, I kind of, what I did? I watched my son. I watched him do his work as the kind of gangstery Hiram after he becomes Hiram Lodge, and with thing, I'm like, let me see how he does his hair. And I actually, the slick back hair, I'm like, I'm doing that.
Wow.
That's really cool. And it's funny, we were crossing each other on set. He's like, really? I go,
like, Dad, you're copying me.
I was trying to figure what that guy looked like. Kind of a not as well dressed, kind of the cheesier coming up guy that was still in Riverdale. So I got that, and there was only a couple scenes. There was one scene in particular, the one with Hermione, right, where she says, "I want to move to New York," which that was a lovely. That was
the baby. Yeah.
I think that was the only scene that we got that intermediate Hiram.
Yeah.
Because then he was in a flashy suit, and then he moves to New York.
Yeah. Was the stash real?
No.
Really? Oh my God, it looked so real. I thought for sure you grew it out.
No, the makeup and hair people are fantastic artists. They're always doing.
So funny.
And I guess switching between all 3 characters, you couldn't be like,
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like,
where I had the gray and the mustache, and then change, and then I'm Hiram, and then I'm back, and it
must have been so trippy.
Yeah,
it was trippy, man. But this episode, I'll say it again, was probably one of my favorite episodes in my career of anything that I've done with Michael, which was just watching him do his thing. And also, I got to work with a guy named Louis Ferreira, who I worked on a show called Missing. It was called 1-800-MISSING. It was back in the day. It was on Lifetime. It was shot in Toronto. I did 2 seasons of that. Vivica Fox was the lead.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Guy, Louis Ferreira, amazing. He's a Canadian actor, but he goes back and forth to the United States, does a lot of, US shows as well. And we became best buddies, dear friends. This is like 16, 17 years ago. And he relocated to Vancouver. And since I've been shooting Riverdale, we get to have some lunches together or hang out or like reconnect a little bit. And it's one of those guys or one of those friends that you hadn't seen in a decade. And then you pick up just, and it's not a lot about, you remember, it's more like what's moving forward. He's a father and he's got great kids, and we have a lot of similarities. And I love the guy. And Roberto asked me, who are your top picks for Vito? Who would you like to see? I said, well, I know a guy that's in Vancouver right now that he would kill it. He's a veteran, and he's amazing, and he can play. He actually played Donald Trump in the movie 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was amazing. He made you like Donald Trump, which was,
oh my God.
So I got to work with my good dear friend, Louis Ferreira, and he said, "Listen, I know I have all these scenes with Michael," and he knew Michael when he was a little kid, like when he was like 6 or 7 or 8 years old. He's known him since that long.
Wow.
Do you mind if I work with him and like run my scenes, and I'll take over that role? So you don't have to do it, you don't have to worry about it, but it'd be natural for me because I'm his mentor on the show. I'm the guy that takes him in. Do you mind if we can start rehearsing and working together? I'm like, oh, please, because
amazing.
I'll just screw it up. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just screw it up. So, so he stepped in, and gosh, they did such a great job together.
Such a great job. Oh my God, it was so good. It was honestly our top, like, if not the best episode of the series, top 3, like top 2.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely. We were so blown away.
Yeah.
So going back into the episode, one of the things that we also get to find out about Hiram is how he gets his name. So he changes it from Jaime Luna to Hiram Lodge. And I do feel like this is very true to that immigrant story, coming to America, changing your past to be successful in this brand new world. Is it something that you or your family could also relate to, like on a personal level?
We kept, our names, my family's names were always Consuelos, and my mom's name was Kaylee. But I do know people that have changed or abbreviated or, slightly changed their names for, when they moved to the States. So I get it, like the one thing I could relate to was growing up, my father, would say during the summer, if I got too dark,
yeah,
chill out a little bit. I'm like, why? It's just like, we're living in the Midwest, man. Just and he grew up, he came up when he moved to the United States when he was in his early teens, and doesn't talk about it a lot, but Mexican kid, in the Chicago area, I'm sure he saw his share of whatever it was. I don't want to say racism, but he had to adapt. He wanted to assimilate.
Sure.
No one prouder to be an American than my father. My father is like, he served in the military, got his citizenship because he served in the military, spent his whole career with the Department of Defense, and and loves America. But he did say, he would try to protect me from those things that, like in the 70s and the 80s, that we would come up against. So not so much changing the names, but assimilating that real immigrant mentality. Like we had to work harder than everyone else. We had to, B+, A-, not good enough. We were just like always, that immigrant mentality for sure.
Yeah, and going back to what you just mentioned, where it's in a very short scene, but when Hiram gets his first job and he goes into the alleyway and the guy makes that really quick comment, and you know, I love the fact that the show even addressed it in a way where he goes back to Vito and he's like, this, you know, the delivery was fine, but something that he said really didn't sit well with me. And I didn't expect that, to be honest, because, you know, you're expecting this general origin story, but touching on that idea of being an immigrant, coming to this new place and feeling like an outsider and being called out on it and trying to find a way through that world. And he ends up kind of on the darker side of the world. It was, I think, powerful, even though it was like that very short piece of time.
He saw a direct line. You know, there's different ways to get to that successful, powerful, respected status, right? And so I think that Hiram, or young Jaime, saw that in Vito, a direct line to that, and
right.
It obviously wasn't the right way to go. But I think that, you know, he felt it deeply. He felt that, you know, in the story, he felt that kind of dismissal deeply. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
Like, listen, I think the art of shining shoes, like my dad taught me to shine shoes, you know, how to shine my own shoes. I love it. I think to shine a shoe, to take care of your shoes, I think is a really cool, and just like I don't want to say humble, but it's like, you know, it's a respect. You're wearing your shoes, take care of them. And I think that, you know, being looked down on, you know, like the actual
physically, Yep.
Down
on, you know, shining the shoes. And then when Hermione, played by Cammy, I love when she plays the Hermione.
So good.
Isn't she
the
good?
Glasses.
Yeah.
Oh God, she's so good. When she says to Jaime, you know, I can't date you. My mother thinks that, you know, you're just a shoe shiner. You know, that it really
hits you.
Yeah.
So I think he saw a direct line to, like, you know, and you know, when you're a young kid, you don't really think about that stuff. You don't think you go to the direct lines. And I think that was a mistake that he made.
For sure. And like that he was so embarrassed by his dad too, like the shoes, and like it just cuts you to the core as a young impressionable kid. So you can understand why he did the things he did. It was just such a great origin story, and it just makes you look at Hiram like completely differently.
Right, for sure.
You know,
Brian Patterson is the guy that and
such a good job.
Gosh, I agree. He did it was such a you know, an interesting way to do it. And I think he did such a great job. And James DeWill, I always screw up his last name, directed it. And he was he also wrote a few episodes in the first few seasons of the show. He's a producer on the show. And he directed it. Man, was he fun to work with. He would come up and whisper something to you right before the scene and walk off. You know, he's like, "You're gonna die." He'd walk off and like, "What?" You know, great actor stuff. So yeah, it was special. It starts with, listen, all these episodes start with what's written on the page, as I will tell you. We know when we get the, you know, whatever show you're doing, when you see these words, you're like, "Oh man, these are just gonna be so good." I didn't change one comma. I didn't change one comma, one syllable in any. I really don't either do that for any of the scripts, but this one was just like, it just was like, it was beautiful.
It was so powerful, and I love that mafia, like mob boss, that whole film genre. So hearing some of the lines that like were kind of altered, I was like, this is amazing. Like they're taking so many little cool things from all those movies. So that was super cool to watch. But every aspect of this episode was just 10 out of 10.
So on point.
So on point. I kind of want to pivot, and I want to talk about Michael. Because this was huge for Michael. And so he portrays young Hiram in this episode. He was, again, really like, he took this character somewhere that we never saw before. He was in the episode in the flashback, but this one, it was just like a whole other, you know, Michael, Hiram, super intense, super emotional, powerful. And we had never seen the both of you guys on screen together. Do you have any like memories? What was your best part about filming with him? Any pranks? Anything behind the scenes?
Again, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. He's obviously one of my favorite people in the world. I've got 4 of them. And he's up in top 4.
Good answer.
Yeah. Can't be ranking them.
He's just an amazing, kind, beautiful soul. The kid's amazing. And I remember a few years ago when we did the flashback episode, Roberto said, it's too bad Michael's not an actor because, we're doing this flashback episode, The Midnight Club.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I said, well, he did some voiceover stuff as a little kid, like Go Diego Go or Dora. He did stuff like
Cool.
Tell me if we ever release those. He's such a cute kid, but he never really wanted to act. He said, well, I said, he's a member of the union. Like he has a SAG card because of those shows. He pays his dues. He's in LA right now. Do you want him to read for it? He goes, sure. Why don't we have him read for it?
Mm-hmm.
And he called me when he got there. This is a few years ago. And he said, Dad, it's weird, man. Everybody here looks like you. Well, yeah, that's called casting. That's what they do. The role of young Hiram, that he has to look like me. He goes, but they really look like you.
That's so funny.
He read and he got it. And it was such a, and I think he'll admit it. It was such a small like little role. It was perfect for him because he had never really done anything on camera before. He went to NYU to study film and television production. What's interesting is that he started taking acting classes his last couple of years, and all the film students would put him in their movies because he's just an interesting, like quirky, handsome, but super quirky. And so he actually liked it. So this time around, about 6 months before this came up, he said, he graduated and he said, Dad, I think I want to act. This is what I want to do. I'm like, really? We just spent a lot of money on,
film school.
Film school. And he goes, yeah, but I think that's what I really want to do. I said, okay. I said, I support your decision just as long as I don't have to support
your decision.
This is on you, dude. Let me tell you what it takes. You got to go to acting classes. You have to go to movement classes. You have to, improv. You have to really, this is not just like something. And so a few months after that, Roberto came to me and he said, we're doing this flashback episode. I said, well, does that mean Michael would come back? He goes, for sure. I said, great. And I told Michael, I said, dude, things can change. Things may change. But I spoke to Roberto, and in a few months, you could be getting a script. So get ready.
It's amazing.
He dove into just getting ready. Just generalized, acting classes. And so when the script came, we talked about it. And I said, I can work with you on this. We can talk about it, but I think the smartest thing to do is for me to get as far away from this process as possible. And I think that everything else in your life, I'm a backseat driver, and I'm so annoying. I'm a dad. But the only way this is going to work is if you find this on your own. Yeah. And here, if you have a question, if you have like a thing to talk about, or you have anything, I'm here for you, man. But really, go work with this coach, dig into the material, and do your thing, because this is going to be important. And that's what he did.
That's amazing. Wow.
And it took everything in power to stay away from that process. Like when he was on set, there was so many scenes we did not shoot together. I would come on set and go to the furthest monitor, like about 100 yards away from that. So he wouldn't hear that I was there, and just kind of just watch. Like, oh, wow. And like I was just watch, and I just would say, how's he doing? They're like, he's amazing, great. And I'd leave and I'd go home, and then we'd meet back at the apartment when he got back. But I kind of, I just, he was a few funny stories. The transportation guys that pick us up for work, we're always like either on time or a minute or two late, or 10 minutes late. Michael was like 15 minutes early waiting downstairs.
Aww.
Ready to go.
Drivers get there 15 minutes early. Right. And he, like, your son is early. I go, oh, that's one thing I taught him that he
Yeah,
had
you taught him well.
to listen to. It was like, be early. And, he was just kind to everybody and, just so earnest about doing a good job. But, yeah, I mean, we watched it together, this episode together as a family a couple nights ago. And I was just like, I was just looking at him and looking at my wife, like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
Totally.
How did this happen? So, so it was really, really emotional for me. And then, if you want to ask questions, like there was one scene in particular where he tells me that he's ashamed of me,
Mm.
And
Super powerful scene.
we had the scenes before that where I'm like, look at those shoes, man. Where'd you get those shoes?
Yeah.
Right.
We had fun. It was kind of like, he called me Pop, and that's what he calls me in real life. Hey, Pop. And then that scene where he tells me, look at you, you can't even get good shoes for yourself, or a new dishwasher for mom, and I'm ashamed to be your son. And we did it a bunch. That scene took a long time, not because he didn't get there, I didn't get there. I think James, the director, wanted to really figure out exactly, because it got heated. It got really, really, really heated. I was grabbing him like this, and that worked. And through the process, there was a few takes. One tear starts coming down his cheek, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And it was the one that hit the light, and I'm like, Denzel Washington in that movie where he has one tear. I'm like, really, dude?
Wow.
Show you're busting out tears. I'm like, it took me a decade to figure that out.
I feel like it was such a great introduction for him into that world of acting, having this moment and opportunity to play his father's younger self, which is crazy. And he does bring such a different energy that, older Hiram, it changes him, life changes him quite a bit. So he doesn't have that, sprightly, innocent, even when he runs up to Hermione and asks her out on a date, you see this energy that you don't really expect from Hiram, because you kind of see him as a serious gangster mob kind of guy who doesn't really have like a fun bone in his body, especially toward the end, or when he gets to, your age, when he gets older. But Michael really brought this like level of energy that you don't really, I didn't really expect it from Hiram. So it was really refreshing to see this different side of Hiram at that age.
Yeah, I think that because, most of the audience knew that we were related when they watched it.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of, they accept that there's like that's cool. I believe that, that exactly that bouncy, innocent thing that totally you buy it. I think that, and that energy that he brought to it was so smart. He made Hiram, he literally redeemed Hiram.
Yeah, for sure. So like, as you were mentioning before, having Michael on screen, like, definitely added that, like, poetic, meta, multi-dimensional layer, because, you're watching all these father-son stories this episode, the story about Jaime Luna and Hiram and his dad and Javier. And, while you're watching this real life father-son story living inside of it with you, Mark, and Michael interacting and seeing, and it is, like you said, very meta in that way. And I really don't think that you very often see this father-son duo on screen and also pull it off. Like, you guys killed it in terms of having those scenes so powerful, and, it wasn't hokey. It didn't feel cheesy at all. It was such an emotional episode for that reason, I think. And, like you mentioned, watching Michael on scene, and I'm sure that, other than feeling proud and excited for him, like, how else did you feel watching your character that you've been playing for the past, 3-4 years through Michael playing it?
Did his homework. He watched a lot of the past episodes. And I think with the acting coach, Joan, who he worked with in New York City, they dug into those questions. So I knew that he had done his work in just conversations with him. about certain things and what it meant to be Hiram. So I knew, like, I felt completely at ease that this actor, I separated son from actor, and this guy that came in is like, all right, he has the responsibility of doing this work for this character that I've been doing, that I've been portraying for the past 4 seasons, and it could go either way. It could go either way. But again,
Totally.
I go back to just saying that it starts on the page. I read the scenes, I'm like, these are great.
Yeah.
So smart the way they wrote it. So Brian Patterson just did a great job, and I knew Michael would kill it, because that's his sensibility, that's his energy that he brings to. That's his kind of like, he has this like, really, inside joyful energy that he brings to life in general. So I thought, okay, that's going to be a great combination. And then just talking to him, like, oh, he's done his homework. This is going to be really, really great. There was this one scene in the beginning where, Hiram, Javier says, to the guy, that'll be $10, please, or $5. And the guy goes, that was horrible. You didn't do a great job. And Jaime like runs out, goes, hey, you have to pay us, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I was like, wow, we didn't even talk about that. I was like, the way, I didn't discuss, like, how are you going to do that? And he was angry. Like, I'm like, oh, all right. Sort of flash of Hiram, just a little flash.
That rage, yeah.
Because it's under there. It's like brewing slowly.
And I did sneak on set when he had the fight scene with Reggie in the shop class. And again, another actor that I haven't spoken about is Charles Melton.
Yeah.
Always, obviously handsome, is annoyingly handsome, right? But I love working with a lot of people, KJ and all the guys. We have stuff that every take that's so weird and so refreshing and so funny and so just a cool take on things. Again, I was so happy that Michael got to work with Charles as well, because Charles kind of also stepped in, like, come on, more, throw me down. Michael was like, are you sure? I don't want to hurt you. He's like, no, throw me down. Like,
wow.
Again, I was watching watching this cool fight scene, and Charles really, took him under his wing and allowed him to say, no, this is, because rage on screen is hard. If you haven't done it. I mean, to me, it comes naturally. I can be really pissed off very easily. It takes a while to get there, because it's an uncomfortable emotion, and people, it's like, it can be very ugly, it can be very sexy, it can be very awkward. Rage is weird. You've seen people get fired. That's weird. Like, that guy really gets angry, or that guy's scary, or that guy's menacing. You know what I mean? So I think he was, Michael doesn't get angry very much like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we even said it in our podcast that, like, it surprised us. That was like the first time we were like, holy, like, Michael's doing something. And we were like, this is amazing. Like, because to your point, you don't really see that. You don't see it for sure in the past episodes that he was in. And you don't expect it out of this, like, little young version of Hiram, especially. But then that moment that twists him and makes him upset, like, he literally raged out, and we believed every second. It was crazy to see that transformation on set, for sure.
Okay, so before, I want to talk about Reggie, and I think J-Lag's next question has to do with Charles and Reggie. But before we get into that, we mentioned this idea of the anti-hero, and that is Hiram, and sort of like whichever way you want to cut it, he does commit murder, right? By the end of the episode, he is deep into that. If you could compare Hiram Lodge to any of like the iconic mafia movie dons, who would you choose?
Well, obviously, the Al Pacino version of Michael Corleone. Yeah. Of The Godfather. I think Al Pacino's performance of that, just very still, very menacing, very like,
Calm.
Calm. I think, but I would be, there's probably a list of 150 guys that say the same thing, that they fashioned it after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say what, I would go with that. I think I haven't really thought about it too much, but just in watching certain people and how they play this bad guy, but it was also, again, some of the stuff that I did is I leaned in hard. Hiram leans in hard in because I know it, but because I know it's a comic book, right?
Mhm.
Totally.
Comic book, and I think that's the mistake that not the mistake, or the one thing that people overlook. It's like, wait, we can really get into this, like,
Mhm.
this thing that people did, the way he dresses and the thing. So I think that it was like, a heightened version of I guess, Michael Corleone.
That's awesome.
Okay.
So underneath this entire backstory, as we're going through the rest of the episode, we also get this wraparound moment where the present day Hiram tells Reggie at the end that he's fired. Like, he can't come back to him and he needs to go back and repair his relationship with his father, as he wishes that he could have done that with his dad and shine those shoes one more day, which was, again, all of them were powerful, but that scene in the car when he's just having that moment in the back and like saying, I wish I could just have that moment back, one of those days back. And you really do. I think that this episode has a lot of those moments, but this is one of the ones where it's very well illustrated that, you realize Hiram isn't just this heartless man on a tirade, out here to destroy Riverdale. But going back to Charles Melton, Reggie, how do you feel about how that relationship ended, with Hiram just saying, we need to finish, you're done here. You need to go back to your father.
I love that scene. Again, that's another scene where the director would come in and whisper something in in Charles's ear in the front seat, and then leave. And then he'd do the same thing, say, no, more, or this is the last time you get to do, this is one of those opportunities that you get to do the right thing. Set him free. Set him free.
Wow.
And we shot that scene. It took a long time, not because I think the performances weren't there. I just think James wanted to see where we went with it, and I caught a couple of the camera guys crying. They're like, oh man, because everybody has a relationship with their father that
Totally.
Father, good or bad or whatever, that you have, like, if you could go back and redo one thing, what would it be? Or, and that's pretty much what he was saying. There's a longer version of that. There's, it's funny. I got to see the longer cut of the whole episode, which is about maybe 8 minutes longer. And, and we'll get into the ending whenever you guys want to get into the ending of the but you wish that there would be these uncut, longer versions.
Yeah.
Let that stuff breathe. All those scenes that we're talking about, like even the scene where I look at Jaime's shoes. I'm like, hey, where'd you get those shoes? That's nice shoes for a delivery man. He goes, I've been working tips. And then I go, and then in the longer version, I was like, so what kind of food they serve there? They have good pasta? And he goes, yeah. And he was staring at each other.
Yeah.
Javier knows that he's doing some illegal shit. And he lets him off the hook. He goes, all right, well, bring some pasta home for your mom. I don't want her to cook tonight. And he goes, okay. There's all these and I understand it's a 48-minute show.
Right.
I just wish like Netflix or something, they would let it.
I love that.
It was like a film, right? Even the way that it all started, it was just very film-like, and of course all the references to everything.
Yeah. Okay, so we're sort of like nearing the end. I don't want to get too dark on a Friday morning, but at the end of the episode, Hiram does finally get revenge on Vito by killing him. He then declares he's ready to get the palladium and then get his the family back together after losing them. Do you think Hiram will ever be ready to leave the gun and take the cannolis, or will his time run out before he has the chance to do so? I had to put that in there.
The cast has been set. The mold has been set. I mean, he's capable of doing, good things, but I think, the way, he's, you have certain people just can't change, so I think that's the way it goes.
And Hermione does say it. She's like, he's addicted to the power of it all, right? So we were just discussing in the podcast of like, is it too late? Like now that he's sort of realizing everything, is this the moment where, you know, his clock is ticking? But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
So yeah, going to that one of those final moments, one of our favorite moments that we talked about is right at the end when Hiram is, you know, curled up in bed by himself, eating some ice cream, watching The Real Housewives, where he sees Hermione and Veronica catching up and talking about him. So I do want to bring this back kind of to you, Mark. So obviously there's this element of you, Kelly, your family being so successful, but also busy working and traveling and being away from each other. And, you know, Hiram kind of has a similar experience. I mean, for different reasons, or estranged for very different reasons, obviously. But when, you know, you have those moments on set when you just want to walk away and just go back home and be with your family. And especially you were mentioning, you know, not having the ability to do that as often this year. What gets you through it all? What got you through, you know, having those harder days?
God, I can't believe you hit it on the head, man. In Canada, my wife shows on like 4 different times. It's on channel 4 times. Like it, you know, that her live with Kelly Ryan is on. You would have to have a hard time not to see it. So
yeah.
sometimes I would get up at 6 a.m. Because that would be 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and watch the 6 a.m. feed. And I just get to sit there and watch my wife, and I'm smiling. I'm having my cup of coffee like I would with her. And you're right. I would get to connect. And obviously with FaceTime, you know, you get to see, you know, but I always felt closer because I could always watch and just kind of, you know, with her. That last scene, man, we talked about it a lot. With, you know, James and I said, you know, this is the only connection he has with his family. Kind of like sometimes I can only catch my family on a screen, and
right,
they don't get to see how he reacts to them. They don't see how he is there's no barrier. He's smiling and he's like this.
Yeah.
Laugh. Yeah, go. He's like, can we play with that? He goes, go. That scene also, they wanted me in like these silk pajamas and like the Hiram pajamas. I'm like, no. This guy literally just avenged his father's death, and it still doesn't make him feel good. You know, it's a horrible moment for him. Not only does it not make him feel good, it brings back everything, you know, back his whole, like why he is where he is, this fatal mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
I go, no, he's not. He's sleeping in his clothes tonight. He's sleeping in his clothes. I'm like, you really? I'm like, yeah. I feel strongly about this. He's not all Mr. Comfortable. He's like,
yeah, wow.
You know, and the scene right before that, they didn't show it. He walks into his suite. He sits down. He takes off his boots and he puts them there in front of him. The shoes, the shining.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And then he gets into bed. But they couldn't keep it because it's too. I understand why they had to cut it, because it's too long. The show
that gives me chills just thinking about that scene. Wow!
Right in front of them, and he kind of just, you know, cleans them off, and he looks at them. And he's like, and then he goes and he watches, you know, and he watches that show. And I said, I'm going to play with this a little bit, where, you know, I turn it off as soon as they start saying too many bad things about me, and like, yeah, turn it off.
Right.
And then. Like, you know, I know, I thought that scene was another opportunity for me that Michael did for me throughout the whole episode. It was the one thing that I could do, except for releasing Reggie and setting him free. That scene was something I could continue the job that Michael did in redeeming Hiram a little bit into showing the audience that he's just this guy, he's lonely. And I thought it was interesting. They wrote, you know, that they changed it a little bit a few times, that he wanted to get back everything that he lost, and was looking at his family.
Right.
It didn't matter. I mean, really, I know he's a sociopath, but really at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters to him is his daughter. Yeah. In that order, his daughter and his wife.
Daughter, then his wife. So with that, Hiram obviously, he's going to be on this mission now to not just get the Palladium. Once he gets the Palladium, he's going to go and find a way to get back to his family. So again, going back to you and being away from your family, what is the first thing that you would do to when you get back to your family? Like, what is the most favorite thing that you get to enjoy doing when you get back home?
We, as busy as we are, and as the kids' schedules are crazy, we have a family dinner. We've been sitting down as a family since the kids were, babies. We always sit down, and even if somebody's going out to eat later or has an event later, they come and sit at the table with us. And now that they live at other places, they have other apartments, that's harder. But I think for us and for the Consuelos family, it's that what is sacred is the family dinner.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Well, I think that's pretty much all of the question. I know it goes by so fast, but we could not be more excited for, seeing this episode, have it presented. And, I think you should be extremely proud. And it is one of those things that I think you can look back on and say, like, we really did that. It's just it was such a phenomenal moment to watch on scene. And I'm not trying to blow it up. I really think that it was a really, really well done job by both of you. And yeah, such a fantastic job.
Thank you. What's funny is that people are like, wait, why am I liking this episode? I didn't want this episode to happen. And like now it's.
Yeah, we saw that so many times on our Twitter commentary. Like everyone was just so surprised, so impressed. And we're super proud of it. We're super happy for you guys. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I know our audience is going to love this and hearing all, the backstories and, yeah. Thank you.
Give our regards to the whole family. Say hi to Kelly and Michael and Lola and Joaquin.
It's like they don't want to talk to the stage mom.
Of course we do. We always want to talk to the stage mom.
You know what's so funny? Michael looks so much like you, but there's moments where he smiles and it's Kelly. And it's like, I see you, but I see her just as much in his face. And it's just so crazy to see that. And he's just such a cutie.
I agree with you. He's got the Consuelos face, but he's very much like my wife in their sense of humor and just their beautiful spirit.
So cute.
And just really quickly, we didn't get to talk about it, but his voice, like he went there with your voice. It was so like if I closed my eyes, I could hear you. Yeah. And it was like we talked about it, and some Twitter followers messaged and said like it didn't even did they dub his voice? It sounds exactly like him. It's so crazy that he was able to go there with that. It was really cool.
Yeah, he's when the grandparents are calling, he'll pick up the phone. My dad will think it's me.
Yeah.
So funny.
And that's another thing you just can't have if they chose like another actor.
Absolutely.
There's just something so magical in that. No, it was perfect.
That's the great word for the whole experience from beginning to end. Magical, and we have it forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you have an 8-minute longer version.
Yeah, director's cut.
You have a director's cut too.
We should a campaign to release the director's cut.
I think we should. Yes. I think we should. Now that this is out, everyone get out there and let's get that on and get it petitioned out there.
Why not?
Absolutely.
You guys are the best. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you, Mark. Again. Thank you so much. Enjoy your Friday.
Bye.
And that is it for our interview with Mr. Daddy Mark Consuelos. Thank you so much for always supporting us.
Amazing.
Agreeing to do this interview. I think people are going to love it because they love the episode. And just to get like an insight on how everything went down. Super, super excited to get this out.
Yeah, for sure.
They're gonna love it.
Super excited. I hope you guys enjoyed all of that. And yeah, once again, thank you so much to Mark and congratulations to the whole family.
Michael.
We really did love that. Michael
did it. And don't forget, guys, we have a new Twitter account. Like every time We have a new Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on YouTube. This is going to go live on all our socials, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. New podcast was released for this week's episode. Be sure to check out all our stuff, all our content.
Absolutely.
We out here.
And yeah, thanks for watching, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.